Hi guys, HLZ here. My sample pack is out, and today I'm going to show you a walkthrough of a new track of mine where I use a lot of samples from the pack, and I'm gonna show you a few techniques and talk about my creative approach. Let's go. Hey guys, HLZ here, and yeah, we're gonna have a walkthrough through this track of mine. In this particular project, I use a lot of samples from my sample pack. I would say a good 80% of the sounds are coming from the sample pack, including a couple of patches from for Faceplant. Now, couple of things regarding my new pack for Splice. I wanted to make something completely up to date. Yeah, there are a few sounds from old project, but the main focus for the sample pack was to creating something completely new, representing the stage I am with my music. Okay, so literally a good 80% of the samples for this pack have been written during the last 6 months, and the clever thing is also for me, two birds with one stone, in a sense that I'm using a lot of samples from this pack for my latest project as well. Already wrote something like 4 or 5 tunes using, yeah, a good amount of samples from this pack. Anyway, let's have a listen to this track. It's a deep one. We're going through different sections, and yeah, check it out. We got the bridge here, then now we're going to the breakdown and second drop. Okay, yeah, on the second drop and the breakdown there's a bit of a twist. The vibe changed completely. So yeah, you get the idea. It's a very deep one. Quite happy with it. It's almost done. I would say, yeah, 70%. There are a few things to fix it yet, but you know, it's already a solid tune. Anyway, let's have a look what's going on here. So first of all, yeah, drums is always my starting point. I'm kind of like a bit obsessed with drums, I have to say, and that's something I absolutely love, just the sounds and to work around with it. Now for the drums, literally all the, yeah, there's a lot going on, as you can see, and literally all these sounds, samples, loop are from my sample pack. The foundation was actually this loop from the sample pack called Blue Note. I'm just going to play you the full loops, which is this one here. So the kick and the snare, they're coming from these samples. That sounds a bit different now because there's a lot of stuff going on, and as you can see, a lot of layers, hi-hats, rides, and so on, ghosts, and they're all coming from the sample pack, which is great because you can pick up, you know, you got the stems for each drum loops, and it's brilliant because you can pick up a ride from one loop, a snare from another one, a kick from another one, and literally make different ones, which is absolutely brilliant. But yeah, let's have a listen to the drums solo. Yeah, you can hear the tone of the snare. Yeah, now it's a bit more distorted, got a little bit more noise going on in a way. Let's switch to 64. Oh, we have a guest. Yeah, here there's some ghosts coming in. And few other ghosts here. But yeah, as you can see, it's the type of drum sequence where you have stuff coming in and going out and other stuff coming in, progressive, I would say. Now we can have a look the way on what I do to get this drum sounded right, but I'm going to use a different project because this one right now is a bit hot on the CPU. I want to really show you exactly what I do on a drum bus, and I'm going to use these other projects for it. Again, here I have a few loops from my sample pack. Let's have a listen to the drum loop. Quite nice sounding, and yeah, there's the kick from one loop, the snare from a different one, and so on. So I just created this new groove, if that makes sense, and it sounds quite nice. So what is happening here? I have, yeah, the whole drum group where I have all my drum sounds, and I'm going to show you what I do. So this section here is, I call it drum process, where basically all the effects I'm using to get these drums sounding nice and tight. And I'm going to play you the before and after. So that's the before without all this process. And with all the effects. So you can hear that with all the effects, the drum processing is much tighter, the drums got more body. They don't sound bad, but you can hear it, you know, it's a bit too much top ends and not as defined as these. So, and that's something you can try for yourself. Let's have a look at what is happening here. I'm just going through the drum bus because, you know, if I have to go through each drum sounds, it's gonna take age. But certain stuff that I'm doing into the drum bus, you can absolutely use it on a single sounds as well. So anyway, let's have a look. The first plugin that I have it is an SSL channel strip, and there's nothing big going on here. You can use any channel strip, but the very important section is actually the low mid. The low mid is where you have the real power, not just of drums, even on bass. Generally, if the low mid has a certain weight, the track is going to have the whole track is going to have a certain weight. So, and these are the settings that I always use, which would be the frequency is set at 0.20, so 200 hertz. Large bell, and literally I push up the gain as much as I can until it doesn't sound until it sounds right, you know, because obviously if you push too much it's going to start to sound too woody or distorted. So that's with the EQ, that's without EQ. The difference should be quite noticeable. Okay, now a couple of things when you're doing this simple EQ is that obviously it's going to affect certain sounds in a different way. Like this snare has already a nice body because obviously something taken from the sample pack. So if I leave this snare untreated, it's going to sound too woody with that push and that 200 hertz. So what I do, I simply put the same plugin and I use negative values. Same plugin with the same setting, I'm simply using negative values, so the snare is still going to be balanced, not too strong on the 200 hertz, and that's the final result. Now, second series of plugin, and I would say this is probably the most important part. For this sort of technique, Bitwig is awesome because you can create effects layer. So effectively you can have effects in parallel using two effects at the same time and mixing them, if that makes sense. To do this in other DAW, to do this thing in other DAW, ideally you need either to duplicate the channel or send the whole drum bus to ascend, literally. But yeah, anyway, let's have a look what is happening here. So I got two layers. One is a compressor layer and the other one is a transient layer. For those who don't know what are transient, I'm going to quickly explain it without going too much into details, and I'm going to use this drum sound for it. We're going to load us a scope, which is this guy here. So what we're going to actually, let's load it directly on the channel. Okay, so you see that the snare is completely flat, right? So if we want to create the so-called transient, we can use a plugin like this one. This is a fantastic one. It's HLZ Transient Shaper. It actually is free and is literally my favorite transient shaper. So let's try to... that's why. So let's have a look now. Yeah, so that's the scope of the snare now, which obviously sounds completely different. But what we're doing here, yeah, that's a nice sounding one. So this is exactly a transient shaper. So what is a transient? I would say the easiest way to describe, especially when it comes to drum, it's kind of like the peak in amplitude, in volume that you have at the beginning of the sound. So you can treat that peak in a certain way to give more punch. It's something that works like crazy, especially on drums. But yeah, that's the principle. That's with the transient. That's without, okay? So let's go back to the whole drum loop and let's see. Let's see what's going on. So as I mentioned, I have two layers. One which is the compressor and one which is the transient layer, okay? Let's have a listen to the compressor first. So here's the thing, on the compressor layer, I always go quite hot. in the sense that I want to create some bleed where all the stuff start to sound a bit distorted, all the percussion comes up. Literally, I want the drums sounding dirty, if that makes sense. And then we have the transfer layer, which is this one here, which, to be honest, could be used as already as a different loop. It's quite nice to hear this sounding super tight and minimal. But yeah, the combination of the two sounds like this. And you can decide it. Obviously, the advantage of this, you can decide if you want to push one of the two up or down. So I can have drums which are more focused on the transfer. But I would say the previous volume setting was absolutely fine. So we got this nice groove going on. Now, as I say, this is kind of like the most important part of the drum bass processing to get a certain punch. Then what we have next is reverb. Nothing too heavy, something literally a bit to create that sort of shyness and 3D effects on the drums. For this drum loop, I'm using the convolution reverb from Bitwig, which is amazing. Generally speaking, of course, you can add reverb for each sounds, but when it comes to the drum bass, yeah, convolution reverb with the right settings, they work quite nicely. But let's have a listen with a full wet on. Yeah, generally speaking, go tight with the reverb decay, but not too tight or it's going to sound metallic and not in a nice way like this. Something like this is fine. And yeah, as I said, they give you that extra 3D feeling to the drum loop. And the last thing, very important, is actually the gate. My gate to go 90% of the time is the Neutron gate. I absolutely love this one. It's a multi-band gate. I'm going to play you the drums without the gate. So, of course, we can hear much more the reverb, but also the bleed that we created through the compression. That's why the gate is very important. So, in a way, we're using the reverb, yeah, to give colors, and same thing for the compressor. But obviously, we need to control these a bit, and the gate is an amazing tool to do that. And I would say you have to be quite. Yeah, you have to use the gate a lot for the mids and the top ends, but especially for the mids. So let's have a listen band by band. Yeah, as you can hear it on the mids, it really makes the difference. And on the top ends, not too tight, because at least that's a personal preference for me, because I want to have still the sustain given by hi-hats, rides, and so on. So I don't want to have the top ends super, super tight. Yeah, something like this is fine. And that's the final result. So what I've done in the project, in the track, is actually the same process, but obviously there are much more sounds, much more layers, and so on. Anyway, let's go back to our track. There's no name yet. That's one of the hardest thing to do when you're making music. Decide the name of a track. And yeah, let's have a listen again. So, and yeah, let's go through other sounds. So this one here is actually something from a patch I've done for Faceplant. And actually, is this riff that created the tune, if you know what I mean. It's literally, this was the starting point, and then around this I started to build the drums and the bass line and so on. I'm just going to play you the sound, the clean sound. So, we got Faceplant. And it's this one, Space Gong is called, because yeah, it reminds me of some sort of weird gong. Sounds quite nice as a bass as well. And then you got a couple of macros here. One is for the reverb control, and these FM amplitude is literally if you want to go. If you want to go really wild with the sound. But yeah, quite happy with this patch. Definitely I'm going to use it more. You got some nice ravey vibe to it. Yeah, so anyway, let me get rid of this channel. Then the bass line, this kind of like a resound is coming from a new plugin by Talo, which is one of my favorite developer. And yeah, it's and literally the subline is follow this one as well. I mean, everything is coming from this Faceplant sound, that Faceplant riff. So that's the sub. And then we have this bass coming at 81 on the switch, and that's actually one of the samples from my sample pack. It's called Bass Harmona. I'm quite a fan of this type of bass where you basically have some noise built in, because it can be modulated in a certain way. But yeah, this, you know, I wanted something at 81 to switch completely the bass line. This, yeah, this works nicely. I'm just going to play it solo. Yeah, the cool thing that having this noise built in within the sample, you can modulate a bit the frequency of it. So I'm just going to so you get the idea. It's something subtle, but that can work nicely. And sorry, let me go with this. Okay, next sound is another sound from Faceplant. It's literally a Hoover. Again, I'm going to play you the original patch. Yeah, it's this one, Mentas, and even here you got the macro and goes quite wild. Then there's some pitch modulation going on, and simply if you don't want to have the pitch modulation, or if you want, either you can write your own one, simply editing here, that's my pitch modulation, or you can simply turn it off. So you get the idea, very nice rave sound. And yeah, it worked quite nicely here on the intro. That's another sample from the pack. I love this pad, it works so nicely. And here I have another bass from the pack, which I use it just for the intro and the breakdown. It's kind of like this very subby one to give a little bit of body into the intro and the breakdown as well. And then all these risers, weird effects, they're all coming from the sample pack as well, and they work quite nicely. Especially this nanobyte bass. I'm just going to play you solo. Really, really nice. It works perfectly on the turnover. I'm just going to play you. Yeah. So, and that's the thing, as you can see, and trust me, a lot of my projects are like this. There is not that many channels into my project. That's because I try to get the best out of the samples that I picked up. In a sense that, simply say, I do very simple, I use a very simple form of resampling. What I mean is that, for the perfect example is actually this sample here. Again, it's something from the sample pack. Just going to play you the whole sample so you can get an idea. Oops, give me 1 second. Yeah. So what I mean, I just pick up one portion of that samples and I just loop it to create, yeah, a different pad if that makes sense. But same thing for a lot of other these samples. I simply cut a certain parts. I reverse a lot of time the samples. That's one thing that I love the most, in the sense that sometimes simply reversing the sample, you can get something completely new as awesome. It's actually what happened into the breakdown, in the sense that I'm just going to play you this one alone. So literally these are the same notes as the previous release, but just reverse, and I got something completely new, which is great. So let's have a listen to it. Yeah, this one is the Hoover. I literally bounced the Hoover from Faceplant and just created the audio bit, reversing it and adding some delay, and it sounds awesome. So that's the main concept of, you know, going, yeah, simply try to make the best out of what I already have. Yeah, and I like the second drop because yeah, the vibe completely switch and it sounds more ghostly in a way. And yeah, that's a perfect example. Also, this sound. Of course, I use sidechain for, you know, mixing issue, but I love to use the sidechain also in a creative way. And yeah, here in this case, the sidechain, I got these pulsing effects on the whole sound after a reverb, and all this pulsing effect is coming from the kick, if I remember correctly. Let me double check. Yeah. Yeah, it's the kick that is, you know, is sidechaining this whole thing. Without, you know, you don't have that moving effects given by the sidechain. Bit lost in the mix, let me see. Again, this is still the nanobyte samples, but on this layer I just have effects and delay. One thing about the delay, which I always love to use it, is basically to have, I don't think it's on these samples, let me see which one it is, probably this one. Yeah, so what is happening here, I love to modulate the feedback of the delay, because basically, yeah, will go on forever, but basically simply modulating the feedback of the delay, you're gonna get some sort of riser, especially before the drop. You have to be careful controlling the volume or the mix controller, because it can go completely wild and super loud, and it's not good for your ear, and especially for the ear of the listener. But yeah, I'm just going to play again what I mean. Let's have a look to the modulation here. That's a good trick to give a certain kind of like rising effects to the drop without using samples. So yeah, you can see here, that's the feedback delay. Because yeah, if I have this one going, let's have a look, let's try. You can it's starting to become way too wild. Still cool though. But yeah. And what else we got here? Here there's some riser still from my sample pack. That's another sound from my sample pack. This sort of dark tremolo pad. That really sets the mood where you go from this sweet pad to the darker section here at 32 bars. And then let's go back again to the second drop. I'm just going through this section. So here we have this bass coming back, but you know, with a completely different melody that follows the previous one. So that's the one that we have in the first half. And then so yeah, that's, I would say, is a good overview on what's going on. I cannot go too technical because that would take absolutely ages. But yeah, now in terms of my creative approach, I always start from drums, and I spend quite a lot of time on getting the drum sounds right. For some project, I want drums super clean. For this type of vibe, I want something kind of like dirty, like a sounding, and yeah, you know, I can stress enough to get the drums sounding right. A lot of people in drum and bass is super obsessed with the snare. This snare that has to come out. But actually, trust me, the most important element when it comes to drums is the kick. If you get your kick right with a nice low mid, with a nice punch, everything else will follow nicely into the mix down. So it's kind of like the kick that set the weight of your track, if that makes sense. And then yeah, as I said, drums are usually my starting point. Then most of the time I try to create something melodic that could be either a pad, could be a weird riff like it happened for this tune. But I always go for the melody, and then around the melody I try to work on the bass line. Because especially nowadays, I'm quite obsessed trying to look for nice riffs for my tunes. Something that kind of like stick in your mind, if that makes sense. And then for the bass line, there's so many options, but I would say don't be scared to use some very simple subline or a classic 808 that always work like crazy. And then again, there's certain stuff going to the arrangement where I try to get something evolving through sounds, through drums elements that comes in and go out to get that sense of yeah, progression that I want to give to my tunes. And again, as I say, there's not that many samples that I use it. This sounds already kind of like finished. There's a lot of stuff going on, but not many samples being used, because I like to, as I say, I like to rework around the same sample, literally doing some simple resample technique that could be just the reversing the samples or a bit of filtering or delay and so on. That way, it's a bit of a challenge. I enjoy, you know, going from one samples and creating something completely different from that sample. But also, it works because still the samples that you're using, they have that tone, and they kind of like sound similar but different, so they work quite nicely into the mix. But yeah, guys, I think that's it, and hope you enjoyed this walkthrough, and I really hope you're gonna enjoy my second sample pack for Splice as much as I'm doing. Okay, take care, guys. Bye.